Good afternoon from Chicago, Illinois, and welcome to Tourist Railroad Connections, More Important Than Ever, Episode 11. My name is Michael Kuehl, and I'm the president of Dynamic Ticket Solutions. I am joined by my co-host, Josh Miller, station manager for the North Shore Scenic Railroad. As the pandemic continues to paralyze the world, and most important, everyone here, the tourist railroad industry, more than ever, we need meaningful connections. None of us have the right answers as to how to navigate these uncharted waters. No one has ever dreamed of the scenarios that we now face. We are all working in the dark, using our gut instincts to make decisions and trying to keep our organizations afloat. Today, Josh and I, along with our panelists, will be furthering the conversation we started in April of this year. We don't have all the answers. We're not claiming to be experts. We're facilitating a dialogue to share ideas and to help us establish or reestablish connections. We have made available for recording past webinars. To access these, simply go to www.dynamicticketsolutions.com and click on the webinars link at the top of the navigation. We also want to encourage you to participate in our discussion. On your screen, you should see a dialog box entitled Go to Webinar Control Panel. And within that box, there should be two sections. If you look at the bottom section, you should notice a gray bar labeled questions, and just below that, another white box with the word type questions here. Simply type the questions that you have and hit return or hit the send button, and we'll do our best to work your questions or comments into our conversation. So I'd like to use that box if we could and ask people to indicate or tell us if they're planning on running holiday trains, they're not planning on running holiday trains, or if you're still on the fence. So at this point, I'd like to turn things over to Josh.
Thank you, Mike. I'm glad to be here, and thanks for having me back again. We have a great panel of panelists that we're going to be talking to today. Today is all about Christmas and holiday trains coming up. So we have started decorating here in Duluth, Minnesota, getting ready for the upcoming holidays, which either will or won't happen depending upon your railroad's situation here in the world of COVID-19. And I'm glad to be here again there, Mike. I wanted to emphasize again, Mike just mentioned everybody, use that question box. Go ahead and feel free to write in stuff in there, just kind of how things are going or how your summer is going, but also more specifically what you're planning for doing for Christmas, because that's what we're talking about today, how the Scenic Railroad world will operate. Our guests here today, we've got Mary Kay Nelson, VP of the board, marketing director for the Chehalis-Centralia Railroad Museum in Chehalis, Washington. We've got Mark Gray, the president of Heritage Rail Alliance, also a member with the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum. And Jennifer Franz, the general manager and co-owner, I believe, of the Hobo Railroad in New Hampshire, and Lake Winnipesaukee Railroad. We'll talk to all of them in just a second. First, something coming in here. We have a news break coming up here with our news anchor, Mike Kuehl. Mike, I'm going to toss it back to you for our news break.
Thank you, Josh. So one of the questions that we got in response to having everybody register was by Lynn Cones from the Kentucky Railway Museum. She's asking if anyone was using plastic barriers between the so, and if so, how it was going. And I remembered somebody had mentioned to me that there was a railroad that was doing this, the Conway Scenic up in New Hampshire. And I actually reached out to them this morning, and he sent me a picture. I was unable to get us to briefly join us today, but he sent me a picture of what they've done, and I wanted to share it with everybody if I could. I mean, I think that's pretty amazing. He said that they have created these little compartments, as you can see, with plexiglass, and erected these wooden structures around various seating. So they've got compartments of 4. And he was telling me that they've been able to get many more people into the cars because of the social distancing, that they've got these barriers in place.
And make no mistake, this is the coach too, right?
This is a coach, yeah.
So at first glance, it's like some sort of Pullman sleeper car thing, but
it kind of almost Harry Potterish, but instead of being on the side, it's down the center. Very interesting. And then just taking a quick look through now of what people are doing. Branson Scenic Railroad says that they're planning on operating this year. New Hope Valley is waiting for governor's permission. KRM will be running holiday trains, although be it some restrictions. Scott McGee from Yosemite Mountain saying that they're planning on running, depending on how COVID works. Travis Stevenson from Boone is also planning on running, but with social distancing. And Jimmy Summers says the Heart of Dixie Railroad Museum is planning on running holiday trains, but putting in restrictions. So yeah, so it looks like most people are moving forward.
It kind of sounds like railroads that are operating are starting to make accommodations for Christmas. And again, that is kind of our topic for today. We have about 30, 40 people here on our webinar, and we thank everybody for joining us. Those of you who are watching, do feel free to use that question box and discuss with us. We're going to start things off and talk to our panel here. We're going to kind of go around the room, give a little intro, and just discuss a little bit what you do at your railroad, maybe kind of your current status, and we'll get a little bit closer to the holidays as we dive into our agenda, which is just going to talk a little bit about all of the details of the upcoming holiday season. So let's start off with Mary Kay Nelson there in Washington State. Mary, thanks so much for coming back to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about how you and how your railroad's going right now.
Hey, our railroad had a different type of a summer season, as many have experienced. We did start a delay start, and our first run was June 13th. So we started for get it up and running for Father's Day. We ran every weekend, and I think the biggest change was us not being able to do our murder mystery dinner trains. The actors were not willing to, nor were we wanting to put them in that position. So we did everything at reduced half capacity. So we had space, but we did take the murder mystery part out of the dinner trains. However, we did do successful dinner trains, served on disposable dinnerware, had different caterers come in, brought the food in ready to serve, and it went quite well received. We've been kind of a bright spot in an otherwise bleak area of not many events happening throughout the state of Washington. We hope to see some of those things come back soon, but we are in phase 3, and we felt with our own county's permission, we felt that starting up and running was something that we could do for our families. And we had people from Seattle to Portland driving that far to come and have a day out on our railroad.
Excellent, excellent. So just a really brief for your plans for holidays coming up here, and we'll talk a little bit more about details here in a minute. But
briefly, we'll do the pumpkin rides starting the 24th of October. We have a haunted train that will be stationary. People can go in it. We'll take groups in at one time. Then we'll have a short half-hour ride for pumpkins, and then move directly into the Polar Express. And we'd also do a Santa holiday train during the day.
Terrific. All righty. Well, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. I'm going to turn the tides over here to Jennifer. Jennifer out in New Hampshire. So we are spanning 2 oceans here now, because we've got one side of the country to the other. And Jennifer, tell me a little bit about how things are in New Hampshire and the Lake Winnipesaukee and Hobo Railroad.
Sure. It's been a good summer. We started at the end of June was when we were able to start to operate. So that was June 19th. It was that Friday. It was a good season, slow start. Once the other areas around us started to open up, people were coming out, and we actually had a better than normal season for those hot, dry summer days that normally we wouldn't have a ton of riders.
Sure.
We were pretty consistent all the way through. So it's been a good season considering everything moving forward. So
it's good to hear. It's good to hear. Plans for the upcoming holidays, just real briefly.
Yeah, we're going to be doing our regular Santa trains, obviously using masks and things like that, social distancing, all the stuff that we've still been doing all summer long. We're going to just continue same path. I talked to our Santa. He's on board. He's already figured out a mask to wear over his beard. So we're ready. We're
well,
final preparations.
Sure. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute, because Santa is going to be a big component of our discussion here. But now on to Mark Gray, representing kind of two different sides here. We've got the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum, and then also the Heritage Rail Alliance. In a way, you're kind of representing all of the scenic railroads here. So Mark, welcome to the show. Tell me a little bit about how things are going.
Hey, it's great to be back, Josh. Let me kind of just talk how the year's been for TVRM, since that's kind of what I'm most familiar with right now. We got started back up in the county health department released us to start operations back in June, once we had all of our protocols in place. And essentially, we're operating at half capacity, much like everyone else. And what we did is we added an additional capacity to the train. But what that prevented us from doing was we had to modify our original operation, which, if you're familiar with TVRM, we have a turntable at one end and a Y track at the other end. So we would normally turn the entire train at the Y, but what we're doing is essentially just turning the motive power. And so the train stays pointed in the same direction, but that's just because of the configuration of the Y. Trains have sold. The response from the community's been awesome. Can't complain. It's just, you know, we're limited by capacity. We have restarted our dinner train service, and of course we had to modify that. Of course we have 4 dining cars that we now have, which gives us a great advantage that the number of seating. But even those that have capacity is essentially the capacity of 2 regular dining cars. But that's been well received by the public as well. So overall, we're projecting roughly, because of no Thomas this year, we delayed it, and then we were going to do it in August, but things were still too bad, so we had to cancel Thomas, which was a big hit. So we're projecting to roughly hit about 25% of our annual ridership this year. We're not going to be doing any of our fall trains into Georgia. We've only operated 1 steam locomotive this year instead of both of them. And we're not going to be doing any Halloween trains. And that's because the setup we have for Halloween typically involves we call it the Erie Express. And people ride from one end to the other end. We disembark. They go through kind of like a fun house, if you will. So because of that fun house part and the inability to social distance within that, we decided it's best just to not do that this year.
Sure.
However, we are gearing up to do our North Pole Limited at reduced capacity, and we can talk more about that as we get further into the program.
Interesting. All right, so we've got a Polar Express, the North Pole Limited, the Santa train, and then I'm Josh in the Duluth, and then we got the Christmas City Express that we'll be doing as well. So that's the plan for the North Shore Scenic Railroad in Duluth, Minnesota, is we'll be doing the Christmas City Express here, coming up here in just a couple of months, and we'll get to that. But overall, I would say that everyone I've talked to, and including us, have actually seen plenty of riders this summer with very little effort put into advertising and marketing and things. I'm not saying we're not. It seems that there's been audiences all across the country. And that's been going well. And maybe it has a little bit to do with some other attractions in towns being closed, but I guess that is the big question. Well, Mike, any questions along so far? Just a little bit from the audience, maybe kind of what everybody's looking at for holiday trains.
Yeah, they're all just reporting that they're starting, and I will add to that too. I did have a conversation earlier today with Matt Gillis up at Catskill Mountain, and they typically run Polar Express, and they've canceled this year. Because of that. And I think there are still a fair number of railroads too that aren't planning this year. Yeah, and I've got Heart of Dixie's telling us that they're planning not their usual Polar Express. The Cuyahoga Valley, Joe Mazer says Cuyahoga Valley Railroad is running Polar Express this year. Alan Ryder says that we have our Santa Arrives at the Southeast Railway Museum annual event. And the Illinois Railway Museum will be running holiday operations, but with reduced capacity.
Sure. The question is how long can reduced capacities work for? But well, let's go to Jennifer first. Tell me a little bit about the Santa train and how you plan to make alterations.
Sure. Half capacity, of course. It was easy for us to go into the summer scenarios with the boarding process because, you know, everybody's got their polar boarding or their Santa boardings. We were already doing that anyway. So the boarding process is going to be the same back to front. The only big difference is we're going to be assigning tables this year, and we'll be numbering outside so that we limit the amount of people that are in the station. So basically, we run 6 cars that are on the train, and each of the cars has a different capacity level, but everything will be spaced out and numbered out so they can wait outside for their boarding. So that the trains that are coming in and out of the station, they don't pass each other, social distancing, of course. So Santa will be on the train. We did change the hot chocolate to chocolate milk, and we went to a prepackaged cookie instead. We didn't do any food service on the train at all this year. It was kind of great, actually. But as far as for the summer or for the winter, it's not going to be that different than any other year. Santa will go through the train, greet the kids, they'll get their coloring books and crayons. It's really just going to be, you know, meet and greet. We'll do pictures afterwards. Just going to be almost normal, minus we're going to be a little more stringent on the mask wearing, since we're not going to be able to open the windows because the cars are going to be heated. So that air circulation is going to be a little more difficult than it is in the summer right now.
For sure. Now, I guess I don't know a whole lot of the weather in the New Hampshire area and everything, but how do you think that's going to work with not having the station? I think that one of the biggest limitations I've found all summer here, even in the summertime, has been that the station is not big enough. Right? The train, I've got no problem.
Right.
It's the station and how many bathrooms and before and after and things like that we have. And then when you limit that, and then now you're keeping people outside. Tell me a little bit more how you've been planning for that.
There we go. Basically, during the regular, before, you know, pre-pandemic years, we've really kind of had those people elbow to elbow in the station. You would have 200 or 300 people just kind of, you know, waiting for their turn to go outside. We started putting tent sides outside on the exteriors of the platforms to kind of spread people out, but even that wasn't enough. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. Basically, with the email confirmations that we're going to be sending out, we want people to come in and pick up their tickets, but it's going to be understood. Your boarding time is at, say, 6:45 or whatever it is. That's when we want you to be there waiting outside at the train. This year, I don't think the people are going to be as concerned about where they're going to sit because they're going to know their seating assignment. So in years past, it's always been kind of a fight. I need to get on the train first, but this year we're going to go, well, you're going to be at table 2. And they're just going to know that that's where they're going to have to be. And they know they have a seat and that their family's going to sit together. And a lot of that anxiety about waiting in crowds, I think, is actually going to be alleviated by the process of staggering everybody outside at different posts.
Interesting. So you're saying that you're getting all this communication to people beforehand. I'm assuming you're planning just for, you know, you're sold out and not, you know, doing any walk-ups or anything. And then that email confirmation is super important, I take it, as far as where you go, what to do, you know, and everything.
Yeah. Well, the email confirmation is just basically going to say, please be at the station to pick up your tickets, you know, anywhere between whatever time you're going to, half an hour before you're going to board or whatever it is. Haven't worked out the exact time frame yet. Then as far as the manifest goes, that's going to be super fluid up until almost the day before the trains, unless I sell it out sooner than that. So that way we have an opportunity for people to call last minute, and if they want to add somebody else, I can still move people around. I'll have a little more flexibility, but day of, no, you're stuck where you're stuck.
Right.
So
interesting. All righty. Let's turn to Mary a little bit about some of the adjustments that you've been making for your annual holiday trains. Polar Express, yes. Now you're actually working directly with rail events then, so not all of this is up to you, really.
Well, that's correct. We've been working throughout the year, really, to learn what their mandates will be, learn what their requirements would be. The most significant is that cookies are prepackaged are required as opposed to an option this year. So we have a third party prepackage all the cookies rather than having a cookie stuffing party. I don't expect there to be many, but it's really important to note that we're pretty small and can make in 100 at a time. We have 2 coaches that we fill. So we'll be down to 50, maybe 55 if we have to. I like that idea of the plexiglass panels, not maybe quite so ornate, but our seats go back to back. So a plexiglass between them may allow us to put a few more people in. We'll take a look at that. That was a great idea. So we learn from everybody and what they've done. We have Santa who's already got his mask and he's willing to do that. That was kind of a fear that they wouldn't want to. You know, it's a tough time of year. It always is. We work really hard. We have long hours. We have short amount of crew, and invariably people get sick during that time. So we kind of know that that's a thing we need to watch out for. So we're going to be doing a lot more as far as sanitation, wiping down all the seats, making sure that there's a great cleaning crew between each ride, making sure the windows are, cleaned with disinfectant, and not take any risks that way. Because I would really like to save that on our crew as much as our passengers. It's a long season to come back week after week and do that. So we'll just be being careful with distancing. I'm sure that we'll be lining up according to seats as well. We always have assigned seats, but this year the lineup on the deck, the platform will be by seat number, which will help a little of the confusion. We've always had to be outside. We have a very small depot, so they'll just continue to be outside, but they come dressed for it, that they anticipate it. We don't have heated cars, so we've always told them to dress warmly. But for us, having an under 30-degree night probably is a little more rare than some other places.
Gotcha. Duluth, Minnesota, yes. That was actually a pretty good segue as far as dressing warm to go to the train, and then the trains are warm or not. I'm going to turn it over to you to Mark to talk a little bit about some of the adjustments that you have made. But first, I wanted to quick talk about your chocolate your alternative to hot chocolate, let's say.
Oh, the Yoo-hoo.
That's right.
Yeah, that's something we started doing years ago, was just giving out bottles of Yoo-hoo. But it's kind of odd that I think we're actually, even though yesterday I mentioned that we've done Yoo-hoo for many years, I think this year we're actually going to turn it around and serve real hot chocolate, which I'm not sure how we're going to be able to do that. But the Yoo-hoo comes in a little small bottle, 6 ounces or so. Obviously, there's handling with the bottles, but at least it's sanitary, and we dispose of them afterwards. So the Yoo-hoo bottle, which is a chocolate milk, and then a prepackaged Little Debbie cake has always been our staple here with our event.
Because that's local, right?
Yes. Yeah, McKee Foods is just homegrown here in Chattanooga.
That's cool. That's a nice touch there, and it solves the distancing and packaging foods and things like that. What kind of other things have you guys made an adjustment for then for the upcoming holiday season?
Well, much like everyone else, in continuing our summer theme, is the trains will be half capacity, and we always have had to add additional space for the crowd, even though we've got that massive station at the Grand Junction end of our railroad. Because of the frequency at which our trains operated pre-COVID, we always brought in additional tents, portable tents that are heated, and also we can have inclement weather, not so much snow, but rain that time of year here in Tennessee. So we also would put in covered walkways just to keep people dry. So because we're actually not using our depot currently as a waiting area because of the social distancing restrictions, and the fact that the trains are spaced farther apart time-wise so that we can do the cleaning, then we're not having the overlapping crowds that we normally would have to deal with. So that still gives us time to set up queue lines and board much like everyone else with assigned seating. And so
How are you keeping the overlapping crowds?
well, before, when we had trains running, say, we'd run 3 or 4 trains, and maybe 2 trains a night, maybe 3, depending upon the timing. Before the first train came back, the crowd for the second train was already gathered, and so they're waiting for the other train to come in and unload. So essentially, you've got, especially the parking area, you've got basically 2 train loads of people parked there. So you've got a crowd waiting as the train's unloading. So the depot can get rather crowded as people are disembarking, wanting to go to the gift shop, wanting to go to the restroom, while the folks are waiting for the next train. Well, since we're spacing the timing of the trains farther apart so we can thoroughly clean it in between trains, then that overlapping won't occur.
Gotcha.
All the crowd from the first train should be gone by the time the crowd from the second train arrives. So that gives us room to stage everyone. Yeah.
Overall schedule. It sounds like a lot of planning has gone into this. I mean, you've done a lot of meetings here, but
and I think that's, we talked about this yesterday, is that adversity breeds innovation. And we've all experienced that given this situation, what can we do to change our operation to accommodate things? And the staff has really come together in brainstorming how we could do this. And and I see that from everybody. We were talking a moment ago about lots of people have had to cancel their Polar Express, and one venue I know of, the theatrical group that normally supports their Polar Express event, didn't want to participate this year because of COVID. And because of the size of their campus, they're actually going to replace it with some sort of drive-through event to where they can still get the Christmas Polar Express theme, but from their automobile, which, it doesn't involve a train ride, but still they're going to achieve the same goal and hopefully make some good money. And so, it's that thinking outside the box that I think is really, really exciting to see people coming up with other ideas of how to replace the onboard event when they've had to.
One thing that will be interesting is years from now, hopefully all this is all over, but, the ideas that come out of COVID world things that maybe will live on, maybe that drive-through holiday event will always be here. Maybe your schedule will remain the same because it works better or whatever. Well, I want to see if we can take a question from the audience here. Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you to see if we have anything from.
Sure. Tom Gray from the Virginia Truckee mentions the V&T Railroad will be running steam locomotive of lights, keeping onboard entertainment at a minimum at 50% capacity. And then he has a question about how what are the options they think people for seating people. So I guess he's curious about how you plan on seating people in the cars.
Sure. So we did talk to Jennifer. I guess you guys are assigning seats. Mary, I think you said that it's assigned seats kind of pre-planned. Is that right?
Yes.
Gotcha. I know here in Duluth,
Yes.
we're just kind of an open boarding, kind of a sit wherever you'd like to, but it's only 25 people because we're operating at a 25% capacity because we do a little bit more of a show with the Christmas City Express. But Mark, do you guys assign seats then?
We do.
Gotcha. So it sounds like the majority, at least on this panel, is all for assigning seats. We have spent the whole summer just blocking off certain sections of the seats to force.
And Josh, an alternative to that is just assigning a car, assigning a coach, and then all the people that are going to be assigned to that coach can, collect but remain socially distanced. And
Sure.
I think probably everyone is common in that they board through the same location. And so everyone has to pass through the train. So whoever's the farthest coach, that's who you want to board first, so no one has to pass anybody. Or of course, the alternate then, if you've got the staff, is to board at the actual coach themselves, and instead of a central location. If your cars are set up to board each car individually, then you can board those people in that car so they don't have to pass through the others. So that's another optional way to look at it.
There's certainly a simplified version there, because assigning seats can be pretty tricky sometimes for us.
Mm-hmm. Of course, then people are concerned about having to walk up and down vestibules. You've got to have step boxes, and obviously in icy conditions that represents an additional concern. So you have to take those additional safety measures to be sure that no one trips or falls while boarding the coach. And then you've got those that need assistance, to get on and off the train too. So that's where a ramp can, plays in. So, if you do have an area where people can board via ramp, maybe you want those people that need extra assistance can board there.
Sure.
So those are some of the kind of things to think about when planning this event.
Wouldn't
Absolutely.
some of it would come across for what the different states have for guidelines as far as tourist trains would go too. So in the state of New Hampshire, they mandated that we board, back to front, and that we stagger seating so that you can be 6 feet apart when possible. So you can kind of interpret that in different ways. So you can be 6 feet from the center of the table, from table to table, or you can be 6 foot from seat to seat. I guess it's dependent upon how your cars are set up and, how you can seat everybody without having them on top of each other or feeling unsafe. We didn't have too many people feeling unsafe this summer, but we did leave room for those people that didn't want to necessarily be with the giant crowd. We had an area that we could move them to that we knew was going to be less crowded. So it's something to keep in mind to make sure that you're able to accommodate those people that are out, that are still, they want to be there, they want to be with their families, but they're still afraid and they're trying to take the precautions necessary, and they don't want to be in those big crowds if they can help it.
What is that extra area you speak of? Like the baggage car? Or?
No, every car that we have, we've got 2 Lackawanna cars, which it's all affixed tables and chairs. And then we've got 2 cars that are tables and chairs. And then we've got 2 cars that are they're bud cars. So they can hold a lot of people. So what we do is we tend to, we hold back an area on one of the trains that we use for wheelchairs. So we know that people kind of expect these days that you're just going to be able to accommodate them. And it's not always possible in some of the train cars that we own. Sure. So what we do is we've got the tables set up that we can move around so that we can accommodate wheelchairs that are last minute, that we're, surprise, 5 minutes before train time. So we can use that same area to put other people. We also, depending on, during the summer it was easier. So the Lackawanna cars, we left more towards for adults that didn't have small children, because those cars didn't have bathrooms. And we didn't want people walking between the train cars masked with children trying to cross in between. They can't do it as it is, and then adding a mask they can't see over, it's just that much more dangerous. Sure. So we knew that those were going to be adult only cars, so the capacity on those was smaller as well. But for the Christmas trains, I'm holding back one section of 4 in each of the cars, and then a jump seat in the back of each of the cars, so that I can make sure that we can accommodate any problems that might arise. I'm hoping that there won't be.
I want to change the topic here over to Santa, but first, Jennifer, I want to go back to you and just a little bit of the technology of doing this assignments, because it sounds like you have kind of a complex seat assignment system, and both for the summer and then also coming up here for the holidays. How much of that is manual versus whatever technology you're using?
95% of it is manual when it comes to the assigning. We've been doing it this way for 33 years. Basically, when we started doing the ticketing system, we took our pen to paper manifest and just dropped it into the DTS system. So for me to I just draw out a seating chart, stagger the seats, and I have one's white, one's black, so one's closed, one's open, and you just go crisscross all the way down. And gotcha. everybody is set up in blocks of 4, because most of the time you're going to have families that are, 4, 5 with smaller children and, more. So
Sure.
in years past, if you've been a family of 5, we're going to give you 8 seats. This year, we're going to be a little more direct with what we're going to be doing, since our seating is already limited as it is. Those toddlers are going to be expected to sit on your lap. We're not going to just give you extra seats this year for it.
Sure.
So that's I think that's a change that we haven't ever done in the past. But I think it's important this year, since we're already at half capacity.
Right. That's completely understandable. And I think in general, I'd have to say people have been pretty understandable, and they're just happy that we're open and running. For those of you watching here, we got just about 33 people or so on our show here. We got a little bit less than a half hour left of our show here today. We're talking holidays and Christmas trains coming up here. We're changing the conversation over a little bit to the Santa component of your Christmas train, both with what you are doing for that, and then how is that going to alter things. I want to start the conversation a little bit about what can Santa do? The person who children normally sit on his lap inches from his face, and they have conversations back and forth with perhaps hundreds of children a night. How does that fit into the COVID world? And I'll take a volunteer as the first one who would like to address this one. And hearing from nobody, I'll go right to Mark.
I'll do it. Oh, okay.
I'll take it to Mark because in general, I think none of us have to invent the wheel on this one, because this is actually a bigger picture thing with the Santa Claus. From the Heritage Rail level and the different railroads you've talked to, what's the future of Santa Claus this year with Christmas trees?
Well, it's interesting. Even the three of us here all are approaching Santa differently, and a lot of it depends upon the type of event that you're going to do, whether it's one of the drive-through events, whether it's an on-board event, and what your local health department regulations are going to allow you to do. And for instance, at TVRM, we are not going to have Santa on board the train. We are going to let the kids write letters to Santa with their wishes, and then they will see Santa reading those letters as they disembark the train. But Santa's going to be off remote, so they're not going to be able to interact with Santa. But I know others are actually going to try to get Santa a little closer. And I've kind of brainstorming this with others is there a way to use technology to still recreate pictures with Santa, but like in front of a green screen, so that you got the parent with the kid, and can you basically put Santa in the background so they'd see the result magically. You're like, oh look, Santa appeared in your picture. Isn't that really cool?
You also do the little hold you real small there, post that photo.
Yeah, that kind of thing. But I was really, when Jennifer mentioned about Santa having the mask that would work with the beard, that was news to me. So there's a take back for me to go back to TVRM and say, hey, what about this idea? Because that could be a game changer. And so that's the great thing about these connections webinars, is picking up details like that.
Absolutely.
Because obviously, if you can get that interaction with Santa and the kids, that's huge. That's big.
Absolutely. Jennifer, can you tell us about that masker? Jennifer, do you want to tell us a little bit about the specially designed, or is that Mary?
I can go, Mary.
I was going to jump in because our Santa has found a face shield that stands out a little bit, and you can see through it. And I think we're adults. It's hard for us to envision that. I think our kids are a lot more adaptable, and they've seen a variety of things throughout the summer. I don't think, unless it's a child that might have fear, and that parent would certainly be able to know that. We're not going to ask Santa to get down into their faces, but be there kind of take a lead from the parent as to how much they want to engage with Santa, because some might just be happy to wave, and Santa scares some kids. So I think Santa on a case-by-case basis we've got experienced guys that have done this many times. They talk amongst themselves. They kind of come up with their own solutions on how they want to address this. We will then have Santa available for pictures after the ride, but that's just on a as needed basis. It's never been a big part of it. So if people want to have this picture with Santa, they probably will walk over and stand next to Santa who sits in a chair.
I think you really hit a nail on the head there with the, this is the normal world for the kids of Santa's age. So it's not weird for them that people are wearing masks now because they've now achieved that. To us, it's still weird no matter how long we keep doing it, but that's kind of an interesting thing. Jennifer, a little bit the specific mask you were talking about with Santa?
I haven't seen it, but he and his wife they're normally like the Mr. and Mrs. Claus team. So they've been developing something that he'll just wear over the beard. I'm excited to see what it looks like, but I haven't seen it. He works over at our other family business as well over at Clark's. So he's been a little busy right now with everything over there. So, but yeah.
Well, and also looking into the crystal ball, I kind of foresee a day that, maybe somebody's going to come out with the Santa guidelines for all Santas. And I think that's got to have already been started amongst some sort of Santa union that probably exists somewhere to, discussing what is the policy for it. Let's see if Mike has any questions here.
I don't, but I'm just curious too, is it such a bad thing for Santa to wear a mask as an example to the kids to show them that, he's being responsible?
Yeah. He's going to take precautions when he's going to their homes.
Mm-hmm. Well, the other thing is that masks are white, so there's always the under the beard thing if it's a beard on top of that too.
Mm-hmm.
What? Yeah, I always wondered if there couldn't be something more like a mesh that was under the beard, and it wouldn't show the mouth, but it wouldn't be quite as prominent. But you make a good point. Is I think the expectations of our communities, our parents, is that we're doing the right thing and they are going to expect it. I wouldn't have said that 4 months ago. I would have said, hell no. But I really do think now that people are going to expect it for the holidays.
Sure, absolutely. I want to remind everybody watching here today that we do have about 20 minutes here left, and you can interact in this conversation just the same. There is a question box there. The default's to the right side of your screen. Maybe it's on a different section, but do type in questions there. Tell us a little bit about what's going on with your railroad. We kind of like to have an informal poll there because this is a webinar specifically for you, the managers and leaders of scenic railroads and railroad museums across the country. And that is what we're doing here today. This is an episode 11 of the series that we are doing, Tourist Railroad Connections, talking about how the railroads are operating here in the COVID-19 world. And today's all about Christmas. Mike, you got a question here from the audience?
I do. Randy Gustafson asks, does anybody use an embedded mic for Santa? Is it hard to talk through one?
Anybody tried miking Santa? Some Christmas shows that I've seen do have like kind of a near-piece thing for more of the show part of the component, but I can't say we've ever mic'd Santa, no, because our performers for the story of the Christmas City Express is the performers are mic'd. However, Santa's not, because his components of the story, Christmas City Express, Santa, he's really loud and they're short. So generally he's not really needed, and our particular Santa's really loud. One thing I do want to talk a little bit about is just with our planning for Duluth's Christmas City Express is that we really focus on it being more of a performance than a train ride, because the experience here is we have this huge train museum, the Lake Superior Railroad Museum, all decked out for Christmas, and we do the show, and that's how we've always done it. We do the performance of the story, and then you go for a short train ride afterwards. So it's more of a performance first. The problem with calling it that is performances have a different set of rules than train rides do. So we were going with performance rules. And so that is a 25% capacity versus the 50%. And so our normal train group was 100 people, and that means 25 people per train. And I didn't think it was going to be possible. And as many railroads are doing right now, we recalculated the budget and figured out it is possible. It's certainly not going to buy me a new Corvette or anything, no Christmas bonus this year, but we can come out with a little bit of net for, in the end, hopefully. So what that does is make the tickets more exclusive and the likelihood of sellouts bigger. So here's another question for the group is, what are you doing for pricing? Is it time to price gouge? Is it the right thing to do, or is it not the right thing to do? You're running at 25, 50% capacity. Do you have to price gouge? I need to go to Mark first here on this, the business part.
No, we in fact we actually in years past we had like first class seating and another special seating for adults. We've dispensed all with that. It's going to be one price. We're not going to charge exorbitant rates for that either, because people are suffering financial hardships too. So we want to sell the trains out and make certain everyone has a great time. And we've ran the numbers. We'll make some money if we sell every seat. And we're comfortable basically keeping the same price structures last year.
Interesting.
For a basic seat.
Sure. Anybody else?
I'll speak to that. We went 2 years ago to an all one price for children and adults, because guess what? The adults like it just as much as the kids do.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went with that, have had no kickback. It was just made things just that one step simpler. So we're not raising prices. We wouldn't even consider that. We're not going to make the revenue we made before, but it's as much our gift to the community, and we want to establish goodwill for our future. So we're maintaining that. I did want to mention a couple of things with our Polar Express. We did a lot of talking, and we haven't come to the exact conclusion yet on the punching of the tickets, because we're handing the golden ticket. For those that do Polar, there's that handling of a ticket, the conductor taking the ticket back, punching it, giving it back. So I think we're going to cut out a couple of the touch points there. But it gets down to really fine tuning how many times and how much we actually interact. And that may seem a little bit silly, but yeah, that's something that we're going to talk about. And then we added a 3 o'clock ride. That was new for us. Because we have to have less people on the train, we added another train ride, and it's at 3 o'clock, which is kind of before dusk. So that's made us have to really step up our North Pole exhibit so that it's daylight worthy.
Oh, wow.
We're lucky to have our Twin Cities Rotary Club step up to help us get that going. So we won't be able to depend on just a trim of lights, but it's going to have to look good in the daylight. But that's an adjustment we made so that we can have one more set of trains.
Interesting. Pricing changes for Jennifer, Hobo?
We did change our pricing this year. It's been about 10 years now since we changed from first class. We used to just do everybody as one class, but then about 10 years ago, we changed it to coach class and first class. That was a positive change. We also made it so that everybody basically is the same price. Children 3 and under are free, or actually 2 and under are free. 3 and up will pay. We did increase the price. We intended to increase the price before COVID. It's still something that we needed to do. We're not going to get pushback on it. We sell these trains out. We even considered adding an 11 o'clock train, but we run into hours of service issues with FRA. So to add an 11 o'clock train doesn't work because we've got the Literacy Foundation's trains that run at 4:30 and 7 o'clock as well. So our nights don't end until 9:30, 10 o'clock as it is. So then I'd be running my staff 14 hours a day. So we opted to not do that. But yes, short answer, yes.
You meant 11 a.m., right?
11 o'clock in the morning would have been, that's what we thought about doing, but we start at 1 o'clock as our first train instead.
Gotcha. All righty, well, we got just about like 5-10 minutes here left in the conversation. Is there anything anybody really wants to add about the upcoming holiday season that we haven't gotten to? We've talked about snacks, we talked about alternatives to hot chocolate and things like that for sealed bottles. We, the seating of the trains, how we would work Santa, and including from our audience, anybody who would like to throw anything in there as far as, things that you're doing. Mike, did we have anything else here from the audience that they were mentioning?
Yeah, Joe Miser from Cuyahoga Valley mentioned that they are eliminating punching their tickets entirely.
Gotcha. Yes, and that's something we did in Duluth too here this year, is that we don't punch or collect tickets. It's just you got to show it to get on. It's not essentially devalidated. I mean, you could probably sneak in your way back, but you do have to get your name called in order to get on the train. And who knows that it's not devalidated anyway. So we're just kind of muddling through that way. But yeah, the touching of all tickets and stuff can be kind of tricky. In the COVID world here.
How about the silver bells? Are you still, for those doing polar, are you still planning to give out the silver bells?
Oh, yeah.
That's the big thing at the end. Do you believe?
Yeah, it's a pretty integral part of it. Santa has ordered extra sets of gloves, so he will be handing them out, and that will be basically him taking the bell, putting it in someone's hand, and that's all he'll do. So, for the Santa train, we handed out candy canes. I'm guessing now they might be in a bag or a basket that the child reaches in and takes a cellophane covered Santa tray. I mean, just again, one less thing, or maybe they're handed to them as they board the train. I'm not sure, but
If the bells could be delivered individually wrapped, that would be another safety measure. And then the parent or children could reach in a basket and just pull out a silver bell. Just something to consider.
Yeah.
Say that again, Mark.
The silver bells, if they were individually wrapped, then they could be like in a straw basket, and Santa could just go down the aisle and the parents could reach in and just grab one to give their
Or
kids.
Santa can still hand those out, but you still have the wrapping.
Yeah, Santa can still hand those out, because I think it adds a lot when Santa actually hands the bell to the child.
Sure. The component of the story there. We gave away a Christmas tree ornament, which is part of the Christmas City Express story. And we've already discussed the same thing, is that it's just a little bit more separated. Santa's going to hand it to you. There's no reaching in and grabbing them or whatever. Funny comment here, Mike. Do you want to?
Tom Hutchinson suggests using tongs like flight attendants do to hand out towels.
So tweezers.
Really, really long sticks, things like that. Yeah, I mean, I think I've gotten some good information out of this, and I'm really excited about the holiday season that we can still be able to operate. And it's just a different world. We're all kind of rolling with the punches here, keeping the conversations going. Real fast, like how much have you guys committeeized this? I think earlier this year we were really getting together with big groups of people. Operations department gets together with the ticketing office and the business office and yada yada. And not that we have the hugest staff, but we had a lot of cooks in the stew. And I think when we dove into the Christmas planning, we shrunk that down a little bit and said, here's our plan, because we now know what we're doing here. Does anybody want to speak to that and how that works? I mean, I know Jennifer, you guys own it, so you're able to control that a little bit differently.
Yeah, well, it's just us and our marketing manager. We make all the decisions, and it's easy. It's just the four of us.
Sure. And I think
Oh, that's actually something I wrote down as we were discussing. So I've gone in this half hour, I've kind of gone from one extreme to the other, thinking we need to have a Zoom call with everybody involved and get everybody's opinion so that we hear all the voices, and throughout that comes some really great ideas, to the point of kind of liking what Jennifer said. You know, sometimes it's just better to say, here's what we have to do. So I guess everybody's got to decide what works best for them, but I'm feel both sides of that fence. I like to let people have an input, but decisions by committee can be painful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
certainly would agree with that. We've found that it's just kind of better to say, we've thought about this already. This is the answer. This is what we're doing. Mark.
Hey, Josh, I think one thing that may come out of these Christmas events is, although they're not really true large scale events like a Dale with Thomas event, but we are dealing with larger crowds. And I'm hoping we can pick up some lessons learned that we can start thinking about how we can do Thomas next year if we're still under some of these restrictions.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Because we definitely got to have Thomas back next year.
for sure. Yeah, for all kinds of reasons, you know. Yeah. All right, well, I'm going to wrap things up here. I do want to thank all of our panelists for being here today, and of course, everybody here watching with us. Been sticking with us the whole hour, and it's been certainly a challenging year, but know that you're not alone in this brave new world that we are operating our tourist railroads, railroad museums in. And there are all kinds of great resources, this being one of them, the Dynamic Ticket Solutions. Just in general, the technology is great, and of course, these get-togethers with the various, you know, management of railroads, but also Heritage Rail Alliance. They're there to support us all. So that is what your membership is for. And, you know, they're a networking organization to find out what other people are doing. I'm a firm believer in not inventing the wheel. Other people have already got it figured out, so talk to them first. And that's what we're here for today.
Stay
so
tuned to our COVID-19 page. Keep an eye on it. New stuff every week.
Excellent. Alrighty. So you got
Great job keeping it updated with new things from AAM and PGAB.
so that is give the URL one more time.
Oh, it's www.heritagerailalliance.org or heritagerel.org. Forget the alliance part. It's heritagerel.org.
Alrighty. And find that and some good COVID information on there. Mary Nelson, thank you so much for joining us from Washington. And on the other side of the continent is Jennifer. Thank you so much for joining us there today too. Mike, I'll turn it back to you.
Jennifer, Mary, Mark, thank you very much for joining us. And Josh, as always, thank you very much. We hope that you have found this helpful and would like to encourage your feedback. Please send me an email with any and all comments. Our next webinar we're scheduling is going to be the last Thursday in October, which is the 29th. Where we'll be continuing our conversation. We'll be getting out an invitation a week or two before the webinar, so please watch your emails. Please feel free to invite or share the invitation with people that you think might be able to benefit from what we're doing. Let's all be safe and stay connected. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Thank you. Thanks, Josh.
Hi, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.